Hello, everyone. Today, I'm honored to have the pleasure of speaking with Mayor Cohen of East Brunswick. Thank you again for taking time.
Thanks, Brian.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. Very good.
Awesome. If you can describe a little bit about yourself for the families that are watching, that are thinking of moving to East Brunswick, a little bit about yourself before taking the role of mayor, just so they can feel more comfortable knowing you and the wonderful job that you do for our town.
Thanks. I've been in East Brunswick now close to 25 years, so it's certainly not new. I have been a Jersey boy my whole life, other than a short period of time when I went to college in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is all of 15 minutes into Pennsylvania. So I really didn't go that far out of New Jersey, even for college. And I'm a physician, so when I got back from college, I went to medical school up to Newark, and then started to work in a medical practice out of Robert Wood in St. Peters, which is where I did my residency, and I still practice, even though it's kind of part-time now with this job as mayor being the other half of the day. I ultimately felt that a lot of the direction that medicine was going in was getting a lot of business requirements that you needed in order to really run a large practice well. So I ended up actually going back to Rutgers for a business degree. So I got my MBA out of Rutgers. So almost everything I have in school is owed to New Jersey, other than my 4 years in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and raised my family here in East Brunswick, because after residency, I, like most of the viewers, was looking for where am I going to raise a family. I needed to be close to the hospitals in New Brunswick, which are really all of like 15 minutes from East Brunswick. And when I put all the things into the equation, just like most of your families are probably doing themselves, I came down pretty hard on East Brunswick as the place to live. It was centrally located, diverse community. It was known for its really top quality school system, and clearly when you have kids, that ends up often being the number one reason that people move here. That's been that way for decades here. It's why I made the decision to move here, and it's why many families today are still considering moving here. Our school systems are really stellar, and I was committed to those schools even after my kids finished college, and I was sort of home as an empty nester. I decided that I would run for a position on the school board to help guide the schools and determine the direction that the schools go. And I didn't want anything that would take away from the top quality, even though my kids had already graduated. And did that for a couple of years and enjoyed it immensely. But that experience also led me to be thinking a little bit about the direction of the township, and looking at that, I kind of jumped out of that arena and moved into a little more political arena in terms of trying to make decisions where the town was going to head in the future. And in that capacity, I ran for mayor and won. So that's what took me to where I am right now, and I don't really look back. I think it was a great trajectory. A lot of experiences led me to be able to do this job with the type of vigor it requires, and vision. And that takes us to where we are right now.
Yeah, and again, thank you. Myself, growing up in East Brunswick all of my life, I can attest to the fact that it is an absolutely wonderful town. I've loved living here, going through the school system and being a member of this community since I was born. I've had the pleasure of saying that it is incredible, the school system as well as the environment of living here. And I myself as well went to Rutgers University. I graduated from East Brunswick Public High School in 2017 and graduated from Rutgers University in New Brunswick
So
in
we're fellow
2021.
alumni, huh?
We are fellow alumni and represent East Brunswick and Rutgers both as well.
Great.
And I can attest to the fact that it is truly wonderful, the town, and even going down Route 18 and going down Cranberry Road, the different shops and the different businesses. Can we talk about how the different small businesses that have opened up in East Brunswick have really taken over? And it's wonderful how a community like East Brunswick can really provide these small businesses to really take over in the town.
Well, I think one of the reasons that that's happened is because of our unique location. We are very, very lucky, and that's something that has always been a blessing. We're located literally in the center of New Jersey. We are exit 9 on a turnpike of 18 exits.
Mm-hmm.
We are equally located between Philadelphia and New York City. It's easy access to places like DC or going up to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to travel, you're half hour from Newark Airport. My kids could land in Newark Airport, text me that they landed, and I could get right onto the highway and be up picking them up at the gate and not have to park. Where could you do that? You know, so we're very blessed with our location. So clearly businesses look at that as an opportunity, and cutting through the community is clearly a interstate highway, well, not interstate, but a big state highway, Route 18, which basically connects a lot of the turnpike and New Brunswick all the way down to the shore. So we have an incredibly blessed location, and that's why a lot of businesses often look to this area. But you have to maintain that corridor. You have to make sure that it's always providing the type of infrastructure that can support these businesses. So that was a huge effort, and continues to be a huge effort of the township, is to try to reinvent what used to be a retail corridor in a day and age where retail doesn't really work any longer, right? Most of you guys buy all your stuff online.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the stores that used to work years ago that East Brunswick was known for fallen into disrepair. They're just antiquated. So how do you reinvent a highway into a way in which it works today? And we're doing that. We're doing it by a redevelopment process, and you can see that's already started. A lot of that is going to be a mixture of commercial and residential units, and the only way you can convince a developer to put new retail spaces to prove that you actually have people there who are willing to buy,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have to live there. It's going to become more of a service and entertainment corridor, because that's the type of stuff that gets you out of your house. You can't, well, I mean, I guess you can go to your doctor online, but most things you still actually have to go to the office for. A lot of the sports venues and things that are going to be opening up on Route 18 are things you need to do in person. So the hockey rink that's going to be built over the next year, that's going to be a feature. We've got the 2 big tennis centers. We've got Rock and Air. You've got the new bowling alley that's going to be opening up next to Aruga's. So you could see already that it's slowly evolving from a retail corridor to a more service and entertainment corridor, and those businesses are attracted to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just, again, I mentioned it earlier to you. It's like a book. Books have chapters. Chapter closes, we have to be ready to move to the next one, and be thinking proactively so that we position ourselves in a way that we're ahead of the market and not behind it.
Mm-hmm. And that's a wonderful explanation. Can you talk in detail about some of the new development projects that are currently going on within East Brunswick, and the opportunities for housing that it'll provide for families that are looking to move into East Brunswick, as well as the stores that are surrounding, if you go specific project by project, the location of where it's at in East Brunswick relative to the different amenities that an individual living there with their family would be able to have access to walking distance?
Well, I think that there's a lot of different housing options that people are going to have if they move to East Brunswick. And that could be anything from rentals and apartments to single family homes that range, as you know, as a realtor, from relatively inexpensive to luxury. Mm-hmm. We've got really everything here. The town's 23 square miles. There's 180 miles of road. There's a lot of places that if you're looking for a residence that fits your budget and your taste in terms of how close or not close you want to be to retail, how walkable you want to be versus being completely suburban. Do you want to be close to walkable distance to the schools, or do you want to be able to live in a more rural section, but then you're going to need to be bused? We have that all. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of what your personal taste is. The Route 18 corridor, the areas that are being redeveloped, are areas that were fallen into disrepair over decades. Yeah. Now we've brought in developers who are looking to turn those projects around. Most of those units are going to be rental units, and anything from 1 to 3 bedroom apartments for the most part. They're going to be built over the next couple of years, so they're going to be built in phases. We expect when it's done, there'll be approximately 2,000 new apartments in the township. Good portion of it right on the Route 18 corridor, but not all of it. So people will have a lot of different choices in terms of what type of units they might want to live in. And most of the time, a lot of young people are looking to a lot of these units as starter places, and then eventually, if they have children, or when they have children, or when the children are old enough to actually enter the schools, a lot of them then actually consider moving into the home ownership, and we see that progression regularly. We also see the opposite, where people like myself who have the big house for years and don't really have the need to really need such a big house, don't want to be paying taxes for a house that I really only don't even occupy all of it.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of maintaining it is high when you don't even have kids any longer. Maybe it's time for me to consider downsizing. And those type of units make it a great opportunity for me as well. So we find that there's never one size that fits all. But the beauty of the township is that we actually have so many different options for people to pick from that, and if you outgrow something, the next phase is right there for you as well. A lot of people who start here don't want to leave, whether that's people who have kids or their families get bigger and need a bigger house, or the downsizers who really still want to stay here because they want to be close to the hospitals and close to the highways and might still work and still want to use all the retailers that they have used all their life, and still have friends that are here in East Brunswick. We don't want them to leave if they don't want to. So at least all of those people have options right here in town.
Mm-hmm. And I can 100% attest to that. My family personally, we've lived in East Brunswick for generations to come.
I know that.
And it's been wonderful. My family has chosen to stay in East Brunswick because of everything that you just listed, how we are so close to New York City as well as Philadelphia, as well as to the beaches. There's not many places on earth that have you that kind of access to two major cities as well as the beach, all relative.
And I think another big feature is that we're trying to instill in this whole redevelopment process that was going on outside of redevelopment, but even within it, is the fact that we're school system in the town's also been known to be a very supportive of the arts, whether that and culture and diversity. So we have a lot of programs that are devoted to the arts. We're looking to expand our community arts center, where we're every one of the development projects has, as part of the give back of all of these developers, something that it gives back to the town that is artistic or art or appeals to the arts, whether it's amphitheater, dog parks, walking paths, connectivity between one complex and the other, shuttle service that gets people from one area to another without necessarily driving out on the highway. We're also committed to a lot of our boards and commissions that have and are made up of people from all different ethnicities and facets of our township. We have people speaking close to 100 different languages that move in to East Brunswick, and if they're here for the same reasons that everybody else moved here, then that's great. They all end up learning English in the school system right after a year. They're all speaking English, but they bring with them a wealth of cultures, ethnicities, religions that we all benefit from. So we're as close to as I could say a really well diverse town of people who really all care about one another and look at diversity as a way of growing. Look, you guys are entering in a world that is a global economy. So having in your own backyard the ability to understand so many different people from so many different cultures, besides just being the right thing, is going to pay dividends to you in the future.
100%. And I definitely agree to that point that you just made about growing up with such a diverse community. I've been very fortunate to grow up in East Brunswick, where from a very young age I've been exposed to everyone, cultural differences, and made friends with everyone from all different cultural differences, and that's helped me excel moving on to college and into the real world, being able to mesh with everyone doesn't matter about the race or skin color or ethnicity or anything to do with everyone's a person. Everyone is trying to make friends, everyone is trying to build, everyone is working to provide for their families. And growing up with such a diverse community of East Brunswick has allowed me to really thrive in diverse environments, regardless of the situation.
Yes, it'll pay off dividends your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm thrilled about that, and I think that we're also very fortunate. We've invested heavily in providing programs in the township so that whether you're a senior, whether you've got kids that want to participate in a whole host of different sports, we've got a lot of those programs that go on here, and we support that in the township, and we support that in the schools, and they do work well together. So like I mentioned earlier, hockey is new. We never had hockey in East Brunswick before. We're going to build the stadium. The schools have already agreed to putting a high school team together.
Really? Can you talk a little bit more about that? That's cool. The different sports for families that have athletic children that are looking to move into East Brunswick.
Yeah.
I grew up playing baseball and basketball and football, and you now mentioned hockey as well too. Can you talk about the different sports that are available?
Yeah, I think that also is a reflection of the needs of the people that live here in town. That was something that people asked about, something that they wanted. It's a growing sport, especially women's hockey, which happens to be growing even faster than men's hockey. And it's a money maker for the township in terms of the facility itself. That money could be used to generate the type of funds we need to build a community center in township, which is something we ultimately want to do with an indoor pool, and all those are the type of things that we would like to do. I'd rather build that with money we generate from projects that make money than to tax people for doing that, which would only be the other way to build. The other big thing that we're doing here in town in terms of sports, and again, responding to the needs of the people that live here in the community, is we're going to build a regulation-sized cricket field, which is going to be up on Heavenly Farms, lit with lights so that those are long games, and it often goes into the night. So if you have it lit, they'll extend the time period that people could use it, and those again not only service the needs of the people that live here, but it brings in tournaments and out of towners that want to come in for some of these games, whether it's cricket or hockey or any one of the other sports. The tennis centers that we have, they run tournaments. What does that do? That brings in people who stay in our hotels and frequent our restaurants. And so the community is, yes, made up of our residents, but it's also made up of the businesses and the people that make a living here.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to support them as well too. They pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's so the objective for next year is to we're waiting for a bid to come in on the hockey rink, but the land's already been set aside for it, and the township council's already approved the capital money that we're going to need to do the cricket field. So that's going to be something that's done in 2023. So that's what communities do. You got to respond to the needs of the people that live there. And if you're playing baseball and you're happy with that, and our leagues are doing great, that's wonderful. But not everybody wants to play baseball. There's other sports, and so we respond to that. Did that a couple of years ago with field hockey and a lot of other sports that started to get more support. The tennis program that we have here in town. There's now a whole bunch of people looking to try to increase the number of pickleball courts because that's become popular. And then what happens when it's cold in the winter? Maybe we should be looking for places where we could do that indoors. So you have to, a town government, the role is to respond to the needs of the residents that live there, and their needs change. And just like we were talking about earlier about the highway changes because the environment in which we're living in has changed, and we need to adapt. We have to constantly be looking at what we're doing and making sure that it meets the needs of everybody that lives here in a way that is affordable. We don't want to tax them to death either.
Exactly. And even to go along the lines of a previous point that you made about within the town responding to the needs of the people. And I've noticed living here over the last 5 years, the different restaurants that have became open within East Brunswick, and places such as Aruga's, and there's new places opening up by the mall as well too.
Mhm.
Can you talk about some of the different restaurants and how that's responding to the needs of the people and different options for food?
Well, it's funny because if I talk to you and people in your age group, and I talk to your parents and people in their age group, I will get diabolically different answers about what they want in town.
Mhm.
When I talk to your parents and people in my age group, we hear about, oh, we're sick and tired of chain restaurants. We want nice private restaurants that are not part of a big franchise, and that's what we want here. And then when I talk to people in your age group, oh, when are you bringing in Chick-fil-A and Sonics and Chipotle? And it's totally different. So we need to try to make everybody happy. One of the big problems in New Jersey, of course, is the liquor license laws, which make them so incredibly expensive, which is why you see a lot of chain restaurants come in because they're the only ones that can afford the liquor licenses, and a lot of restaurants can't make ends meet without being able to sell liquor that's got a much higher markup than food.
Mhm.
So that's the reason why you see a lot of chain restaurants more than private. The private guys just can't afford that type of thing. But you have seen a lot of them move in here, and what's interesting about what started to move into town, besides some of the big chains, is that there's a lot of restaurants that cater to different ethnic groups, which reflects the fact that East Brunswick is such a diverse community. And I could, think of any ethnic food, and there's probably a restaurant in East Brunswick that caters to that.
Yeah.
And it's not only being frequented by people that are in that ethnic
Yeah.
group, right?
It's everyone.
Which is everyone
Yeah.
goes there, which is great.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, they wouldn't do that if they didn't think that there was a market of people in this area that were interested in going and frequenting those places. Otherwise, they just wouldn't open it.
Mhm.
And none of them have really gone out, even through the pandemic. Most of them are still operating. So that's a good sign that the people that live here are supportive of these different restaurants, and I don't see any reason going forward for that to change as people move in or as the different venues open up for the entertainment sections on Route 18. There's probably going to be even more need for people to go out and use restaurants, and I still believe that there's room for future growth despite what we've seen already.
Mm-hmm. And now, since your time as mayor and everything you've noticed, what are some of your favorite qualities about East Brunswick that you've either talked about previously or some things that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, I think that the best quality of living in this township is that despite how people got here, whatever route they took, 30% of the people that live here are first generation Americans. And so for them, it might have been a little tougher road to get to this country than maybe some of us who've lived here all our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever reason people got here, the great equalizer is the fact that most of them have moved here for the quality of our schools. And they all want the same things for their children and for their families. And that's what's kept East Brunswick where it is for decades. So despite the fact that we may look a little different, we may look a little bit more multicultural than we did 20, 30, 40 years ago, but the underlying thing that makes East Brunswick so appealing to so many people is the same. And that's a great quality. Not a lot of towns can say that. And we keep evolving and making sure we adapt to the times in which we're living. There was a time when East Brunswick was all rural. But then Industrial Revolution came in place, and guess what? East Brunswick started having factories, and people moved here because of our business opportunities and manufacturing that was done in town. And then that went by the wayside in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and you started seeing people move out here as urban sprawl became the thing, and you started to see the buildup of malls and big commercial buildings and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, East Brunswick Mall came in, Brunswick Square, and all of the retail corridor that we had. We're going through another one of those periods now where we have to kind of redefine where we are, though that is over now. And we're changing the chapter, and East Brunswick has always been able, no matter what's going on in the world around it, to be able to adapt into the world in which it lives and still stay true to itself. that's what's remarkable.
It really is. And then one closing remark to the families that are watching and are between East Brunswick and a few different towns, and they're thinking of moving to East Brunswick, but they just want to be sure that it's the right decision for their family. What's one thing that you would say to them to help them feel comfortable moving into this town?
Well, I think the first thing you should do is just drive around, talk to people. They're very friendly. They're more than willing to tell you what's on their mind. I can assure you of that. And just take a drive. And you're going to need a map because there's so many different little secrets about East Brunswick that you heard already me talk a little bit about the building, the development type of stuff that's being done. But we also opened up 2 brand new parks this year. So there's definitely rural sections of town. There's sections of town that are very historical, that date back to the Revolutionary War or Civil War. There's parts of the township that are definitely more arts oriented, like our community arts center. So I think just a little field trip and driving around the township, you'll see what I'm talking about with its not just diversity of people, but diversity of terrain. And I think that's exciting. The 2 new parks that we opened up, one is called Beaver Dam Park. It was an old paint factory that was closed down in the 80s as a Superfund site because the paint was getting into the ground, and the town, DEP for the state and the EPA for the federal government closed it down and cleaned it up. Well, it's been cleaned up for a couple of years now. So now that's a true success story. They've turned that back over to the town. It's always been township property, and we now made walking trails through it, and there's wildlife there that really haven't seen humans regularly in decades. They don't even move out of the way when you walk by. It's just fascinating. So that was brand new, that we opened up about a year ago. And then this past year, we just opened up Tammany Park, which is not far from the Elks Lodge right on Lake Farrington. And it is pristine property right on Lake Farrington. And it's being used primarily for the Boys and Girl Scouts as training grounds for them for overnights. But it's open to anybody. But if you walk through there, and again, a bunch of acres right out on the lake, you think that you're back to living in the times when the Indians, well, that's actually Tammany was an Indian chief. But that's just fascinating that in a town where you can go from development, that you could go to parts that are so rural that it looks almost untouched.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of living here. You have all of that.
Definitely agree. And like Mayor Cohen had said, first thing to do if you're interested in moving to East Brunswick is to really drive around the town and check it out. Get a feel for yourself on all of the wonderful things that this town has to offer. If you're interested in looking at specific homes and you don't really know exactly where you want to go or need some recommendations, feel free to reach out to myself. And thank you, Mayor Cohen. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to really educate everyone who is thinking about moving in East Brunswick, or even people that are living in East Brunswick currently and just want to know more about the town.
Well, you're doing a good thing, Brian. This is a great way of introducing people to what makes us unique. And you want people to move here for the right reasons and be happy and comfortable with their choice. And I think this is a great way of being able to do that.
Perfect. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
All right.